Well, hello again, everyone, and welcome to our latest webcast that we're bringing you from Travel Weekly as part of our Roadmap to Recovery series. And I'm joined today by Joanne Dooey from the SPAA, by Gary Lewis from the Travel Network Group, and by Alan Cross from Jet2 and Jet2 Holidays. So welcome, everyone.
Welcome.
Now, look, it's great to have you here. I wanted to bring you all together because we heard, or we were all waiting, weren't we, yesterday for Boris Johnson's announcement, his Easter Monday announcement that we hoped would give a little bit more clarity on the resumption of international travel. I'll come to you first, Gary. I mean, the immediate response from a lot of people was disappointment. I don't know whether you agree with that. Some would say, really, it might have been to be expected because we're really waiting for the Global Travel Task Force report on the 12th. But what was your overriding feeling from what Boris said?
Not unexpected, hugely disappointing. Creates a real sense of anger and frustration within the travel industry community when we can see the media get into a frenzy every time they're expecting a conversation around a summer holiday. We're all very much aware of the 12th of April as a specific date with evidence-backed information worked on by the industry and the Global Travel Task Force to make an announcement. So for Boris seemingly to mention it on his own, to come out on the 5th on a bank holiday Monday, set expectations at a level where we couldn't see how they could come out with any real clarity, but we still hoped and prayed that they were going to be able to come out with something to give some certainty. And even if that certainty is, we know we're going to go on the 5th, on the 15th, 17th of May, or we know we're going to go on the 1st of June, or we know we're going to go on the September, but just basically bumbling over to the 12th of April leads to this confusion. And then for them to say we're still hoping for the 17th of May and then say don't book summer holidays just causes absolute frustration and anger. This is our livelihoods and this is a public health crisis, but the public health crisis needs certainty about how we as the travel industry economy comes out, and that's why it was hugely disappointing.
Okay, all right, lots of points to pick up on there, but let's just get everybody's initial reaction first and then we'll pick through them all. Joanne, the SPAA put out a statement. You were disappointed as well, weren't you?
Yeah, well, like, we obviously understand that Nicola Sturgeon will do her own thing anyway, and she wouldn't go with what Boris says. So we are aware that we would have probably been a few weeks later, but we had been hoping that there would be some sort of clarity on, you know, the traffic lights, if it is the traffic lights we're going to go with, dates. Obviously, I know, as Gary has said, I know the work that's going on behind the scene with our industry and with the government, but I think it was very much disappointing because everybody was hyped up, the press are on to you, you're giving statements on things that you don't know really anything about yet. You have to backtrack a bit. You've got consumers out there not knowing if they can travel on the 17th of May or if they can, or if they can book a holiday. And, you know, the whole thing is totally frustrating the industry. The only thing that I came away from it, he did say was hopeful. That he was on track for things. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that come, you know, next Monday when the Global Task Force obviously give their report that we've all kind of fed into, that there will be some glimmers of hope, that we can get that confidence out there, because customers are confused and we as an industry are totally confused about what we can do and what we can't do.
Yeah, well, I mean, actually, you make a good point, Joe, because you know, he hasn't ruled out the 17th, has he? And in all respects, domestically, we are very much on track, and everything else is going to be opening as per the roadmap in the UK. So, Alan, you've got, you know, you're ready to fly, aren't you, from May the 17th? Are you still confident that that's going to happen based on what you heard yesterday?
Well, regarding to all the confusion that gets talked about at this moment in time without clarity, and again, what can I add to what Gary and Joe's already said? But the 17th of May is the date that everybody's working to at the moment. And at this moment in time, that's when we're going to be flying. Now, there's a lot of stuff coming back from the report from the Global Travel Task Force. It was always the 12th of April that they were going to report back. So why we had any sort of announcement yesterday makes no sense whatsoever and just confuses and muddies the water. What we need is confidence and clarity at this moment in time. We're a year down the road. And is it too much to ask for?
Yeah, okay. But what we do know is that there is going to be a traffic light system brought in. Now, we don't know which countries are going to be which colour. We don't know really all the requirements, but at the moment it looks like even if it's a green country, there's going to be restrictions and costs associated with that because of testing requirements. So, Gary, if I come to you, there's been a lot of people saying, I mean, I think Johan Lundgren even this morning was saying that those testing would still be prohibitive because it could be £200 per test if it's a PCR test required. We don't know that yet, but that would price some people out of a holiday still, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and it comes back down to the government understanding what our requirements are as an industry and the impact it has on the overall economy. £200 per passenger is absolutely prohibitive to a huge amount of customer base. There is ways around it. There's ways around specific sector support, and we're saying to the government we need specific sector support. £200 on a testing kit where we're giving testing kits out free of charge to everybody and anybody seems like crackers now. That doesn't seem like a logical step to getting the whole economy moving freely. So that it comes down to this argument about specific sector support. It's not just about we've been locked down since March and we've got another 6 months of lockdown until people actually depart, or if they depart in May, that's when we start earning an income. So it's not just about grants and financial help, it's also around how to make people be able to move without being prohibitive. And that's why we need them to understand this logic about specific sector support.
Yeah, all right. And Alan, just to come to you then on those, that the cost of the tests, if they are, as we believe, going to be required, even for the green destinations, and it'd be 2 tests, just before departure back into the UK and then on arrival. What impact would that have on a Jet2 Holidays customer?
You look at it this way, Lucy, 50% of all the holidays getting booked currently are family. And family, when we get people coming back summer 21, the pent up demand, a lot of it is family. Family's another £800 to £1,000 is a hell of a lot of money, and it doesn't work. Quarantines doesn't work either. So unless there's cost effective and speedy tests, then £200 a head, I don't see how that's going to build confidence with the public to travel again.
Yeah, okay. And let's just pick up on this confidence of the public. Gary mentioned it, but one of the things that Boris did say yesterday was not to book summer holidays abroad until the picture is clearer. I don't want to give hostages to fortune or underestimate some of the difficulties we are seeing in some destinations. So, Joanne, for you as a travel agent and your members and stuff, that really damages confidence, doesn't it? Because we've been constantly trying to get this message that it's not illegal to book. We know we can't go away at the minute, but you can still book. But now he's saying don't even book.
Yeah, and that's not what we want to hear. And we have been working, the SPA has been working with the Scottish Government about some of the messages that some of the ministers have been putting out there with regards to it's illegal to book holidays rather than currently it's illegal to go. And we thought we had got a bit of a breakthrough because they had started to kind of change how they were speaking, and they were saying, at the moment you can't travel, at the moment I haven't booked, which was a bit better. But obviously again, yesterday, it's illegal to book. We're not going to know what countries are going to go into these green channels. So confidence is really, really low. And as an industry, we need the government to help us here to get some sort of confidence for people to realise they can book, but as long as they're booking with reputable people and that they've got the flexibility to move. And that's the big thing that we have been pushing all year, and at the start, we were reactive, but we're not reactive now. So we know what we're doing. So people should be confident in booking, but we don't need any minister out there doing what they're currently doing with regards to saying do not book at the moment, because we do need them to book at the moment.
And Gary, just to come to you, similar thing, but obviously, hundreds of members in your organisation who have been desperately trying to keep going by making bookings, even if they are for 2022, etc. Does that message, is that quite damaging, or do you think consumers, won't be affected by that?
Well, consumers will be affected by that, and they were already affected by it last week. But I think we have to put it into context of the public health crisis, and we're asking the government to be clear on messaging, and that's why yesterday was so disappointing. I can understand the ministers saying don't book summer holidays because they're trying to be very clear on the message. They're not saying don't book I'm not saying it's illegal to book, but when you layer that on top of the media frenzy, you layer that on top of ministers talking about it's illegal to book, it just gets lost in the message. And therefore, I think that's why it's really difficult on how we communicate it. What we do know is when we get clear dates of travel from, demand will come back, bookings will happen immediately. And even if that isn't customers traveling May, June, July, but they're traveling September onwards, October onwards, demand will come back straight away. Customers will make their own choices about how confident they are. And all of us can see what's happening in France, what's happening in Italy. There's talk about a third wave. We've got to put that in context around what we're shouting about. I think we are asking the government to give clear messaging, and that clear messaging is based on the evidence. That evidence is coming from the Global Travel Task Force on the 12th of April. So let's just wait till that comes. Let's have clear messaging and then be consistent. And what the government have already been caught out, they were caught out last year by opening up Spain, and then we wanted to refund the money again. Well, demand came hugely back, and then the government were embarrassed by opening it up and then being caught with this second wave. So I can understand why they are finding it difficult. But Boris seems to have gone off on his own, whilst we're waiting for this huge amount of work that's been done with the Global Travel Task Force. Every single department in government, Whitehall Round Table, I know, Jet2 and us and others and SPAA, we've all submitted huge amounts of information that will then give clarity about green light, amber, red. That will give clarity around what we expect from a vaccination point, a testing point, and a quarantine point. We're making the demands around not charging for testing and making quarantine not part of a green light country, but that will give confidence to customers. And like Joe said, we're hopeful for the 17th of May. I'm telling members, be hopeful. But the reality, it took us 3 months from January to get our house in order, even with vaccinations, to bring that the infection rates down. If it takes Europe 3 months, that's April, May, June. We would hope July, August, September. Well, if we get July, August, and September, and I think we would be over the moon as an industry. But demand will come back as soon as we get that certainty, and that really is preying on logical, sensible planning from that 12th of April announcement.
Okay, and would you agree with that, Alan? Are you thinking that July, August, September is really realistic? I mean, actually, we joined a call this morning with British Airways and Virgin and Heathrow, and Sean Doyle from British Airways said, I expect the green list to become quite expansive by the summer, and he was pretty confident actually of a strong summer. And Johan Lundgren this morning on BBC was saying we've still got real reason to be optimistic about the summer. So do you feel optimistic, and from sort of what date onwards?
Yeah, I think it's all about customer confidence, but customers' demands. They want to travel, they want a holiday, and they're going to trust that people like Jet2 Holidays, people like Joe as a travel agent, and a consortium like Gary will do it safely for them, and that's following all the guidelines and the evidence that's out there as well. Flying, if it starts on the 17th of May, fantastic, but it will be gradual, it'll build up, and then we're looking at if we can get a good July, August and September out of this, and I don't see any reason why realistically we can't do that if it's managed correctly and the right communications are sent out there and people adhere to that, then yeah, July, August, September as getting a boom time this year and get some cash flow running again is a good thing for the industry and a good thing for the country as well.
Yeah, and booking wise, Gary, because Irene Hayes from Hayes Travel was on the telly this morning saying that in March 70% of their bookings were for 2022 and the remainder were for much later in 2021. Would that be similar for your members? Are people kind of biding their time and thinking about holidaying either next year or certainly later this year?
Yeah, that is very true. But there is also demand for June and July as well. There is demand there. It's inquiries, but they're being careful about making those decisions. I think it's obvious that September onwards, people have got real confidence. They can see themselves that the world's going to get its house in order. America, specific European countries are already there. What Israel have already done. I think why we should be really excited is travel is not going to be stopped forever because of this pandemic. The demand is there enormously. We just need to be able to be around to take advantage of it. And with this far through the crisis, we're the #1 affected industry, which is why we just need the government help. Clarity, make a decision and stick to it, but specific sector support. There is still more support needed. And yes, the furlough and the grants and the SEBO loans have been enormous. I don't believe 65% of the industry would have survived till this length of time without a lot of that support already. But we are going to be the one that comes out longer than anybody else. We can't open up till the world opens up. And whilst
Gary, I mean, I don't disagree with you, but do you really think that sector-specific support is going to be forthcoming?
No, but we have to keep. I think there is a chance of it, but we have to keep shouting about it, making it really clear. It is a political decision. They understand that our sector is completely different to everybody else, and we've made that throughout government and throughout the different departments. They understand why furlough doesn't properly help our industry. They understand that we don't earn any income till travel. They understand that we have to give all of our profits back through the refunds through the start. Next week, as I think Joe mentioned earlier, I think off the call, that next week the whole of the UK gets back to some level of normality, where the barber shop will earn money immediately, the restaurants will earn money immediately. We will not earn money until people travel. So they understand that. We have to keep shouting about it. Do I think in the overall
Gary, do they understand that? Because even if you look at the restart grants that you can now apply for, I mean, I think it's it's up to 6,000, isn't it, if you're per branch, if you're a travel agent, and yet hospitality gyms, they can have up to 18,000, because I assume it's because the government understands that they can only partially restart. Well, it's the same token really for travel. We don't just open our doors and instantly make money. It's only a partial. You can't necessarily open and suddenly instantly make cash again.
So let me rephrase that. They have been told, individuals understand it, but there's such a quagmire of different government departments making different decisions in the middle of this crisis that they get things wrong. And therefore, you're right, fundamentally, they've fully not understood it as a government, otherwise they've got the decision right. So I agree, I accept that. But what my point on that is, we're making the argument. So as soon as, for example, the grants were around hospitality and leisure, but we're not classed as hospitality and leisure, we're classed as retail. And therefore we got £6,000 grants, not 80,000 grants. Well, we immediately, through the Safe Future Travel, went to government and told them that, and they sort of put their hand and went, "Oh no, you're right." And then they've looked to try and resolve that. They've not been able to resolve it. So you're right, they don't understand it, otherwise they get the decision right. But we have made the arguments time and time again, and we're embarrassing them every single time when they trip over themselves through this quagmire of different departments trying to make decisions quickly and get that support out there. So we've got to keep making the arguments. We've got to keep shouting about it. I think there is absolutely a chance in the recognition. We also get help from people like the airlines, Jet2 and the big airlines, the airports, all coming together to make those arguments consistently and clearly. Do they care enough to make that decision if the rest of the economy is moving? I suppose that's the challenge. Do they care enough? And we have to keep shouting about it. And I think we were making all the right arguments in all the right areas, and we just have to keep going.
Is it a case that, I mean, it's interesting you said there, Gary, do they care enough? I think there are some people that feel perhaps there just isn't the political will to support a restart of international travel, because they're obviously very scared of getting it wrong. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Gary said there with regards to carrying on screaming about getting some tailored support for our industry. And the SPAA have built a really strong relationship with the Scottish Government through this, especially with the likes of Jamie Hepburn's office, who is the Business Minister. And we did get a grant through in Scotland, which obviously used guys down south didn't get. But we did get that through, and we actually sent a letter last week with regards to the restart grants, that we are actually sitting in retail rather than leisure and hospitality, and obviously the differential. Right. And Kate Forbes, the Finance Minister in Scotland, said that she will carry on looking at it. The problem we've got in Scotland is now we're up for an election. So we've built all these relationships with all these politicians, and they might not be in that office, So, if SNP don't get in, it might not be the same people. We've built up a great relationship with some of these people, and they might not be there. And, anybody that watches the thick of it, one minute you're the Transport Minister, then you could be the Agricultural Minister the next week. So that's the only issue that we've got, but I do agree we still need to keep going on about it, because we need some sort of structured help, because we will not get the money back in the way other industries do, like a coffee shop. So they have to give us something. And like the strategic framework grant money that we got there, that did help, but they've stopped it and they've given us this restart. But we need some sort of help. And other industries were getting money when they opened up last year, when they couldn't fully sell what they usually do. So restaurants and bars were getting some help. Why is our industry not getting it? And there's also a level up in Scotland, there's a level of people that have been totally left out, which is home workers.
Yeah.
You know, and they just automatically thought that the home workers were going to get a self-employment grant. But some of these people aren't self-employed. Some of them are directors of their small business home.
Yeah, so your travel and tourism grant was only for retail outlets, wasn't it? For
outlets.
Yeah, okay.
So
and how have the home workers been coping then, if they haven't been able to?
There's been discretional grants available that a lot of them have applied for and got, which has been good. So Scotland has given some discretional grants out, which is approximately, I think some were 2,000, some were 3. So they've managed to get them, and the ones that have been self-employed have been able to get some sort of help. But there is a mass amount of these people that aren't self-employed. They're directors. So they've not been able to get the self-employment grants, or they've not been trading long enough as well. A few of them fell through that at the start. So there has been a real level of people getting no help whatsoever, which hasn't been great.
Yeah, okay, understood. So you need to, but as you both say, we do need to keep putting that pressure on. All right, I want to just move on to get your views on vaccination certificates. Start with you, Alan. I mean, obviously, if they were sanctioned and brought in, it would remove the need, I guess, for adults for the testing side of things, which would keep those costs down. So is that something that you support short term, or what would Jet2's view be?
It's encouraging to begin with, but we've got to remember, as I said earlier, 50% of everybody that's booking at this moment in time, and a lot of the ones for the summer, are family.
Yeah.
So you can't have the ones that have been vaccinated going and the kids not going with them. So there has to be a combination solution within this year. It might be part testing, part vaccine, etc. that way. I know it's getting very controversial now with the hospitality industry and large events and sporting events. Where does it stop? But I think for travel between the UK government and foreign governments, I think it will be part of the introduction to get things moving again. And from the short term, we need to get things moving again. So I think we need to look and consider that every opportunity as a positive opportunity if we can get the planes flying and the holidaymakers travelling.
Yeah, and your statement, Jo, you also backed vaccine certificates, yeah?
I do think as an industry we've been used to having, vaccination certificates, yellow fever and things like that for other countries. So it's nothing new as an industry. So I do think until we're out of a pandemic, that is something that we do need to look at. And with regards to people that can't get it through ill health or things like that, we should be doing testing. And, why are we not doing antigen or lateral flow testing at the airports rather than, obviously the PCR, which costs so much money? We've pushed since day one for, a quick, affordable testing regime at our airports, and our airports are equipped to do it. So why are we not doing that? And saying that, I think that is something that's well on the agenda with the Global Task Force. So let's keep our fingers crossed that when we do get the results back from that is something that we'll look at. But yeah, I do think we need to have some sort of, COVID status certification to move forward for a short term. And as Alan said, it's not just going on holiday, it's going to festivals, it's going to sporting events, all the things that we want to be able to do to get back to some sort of normality.
You think customers would be very happy with that if it meant that they could then start traveling?
Yeah, I do think people understand, and yeah, I get the whole thing about, but that's not fair because we're younger and we might not have had our vaccination, but we're already seeing about this Johnson & Johnson vaccine that's only one shot that you need to get, and are they going to give that to the under 30s? So there's already been a lot of publicity this weekend in the papers that the young and lively market will be going with this one shot, and they are the group of people who want to get away. They're the ones that are saying, I'm booking, and Alan will back me up on this. So you know, I do think that we do need to look at some sort of certification for a short term to try and get us started again.
Yeah. Gary, your view on vaccination certificates, or your members' views?
Yeah, listen, it's clear and obvious that anything to get people away and travelling safely and coming back safely and getting countries happy to accept our customers is something that we would be hugely supportive of. I think the vaccine certificate, passport, whatever we call it, it's just another great example of the government trying to deal with a complex issue and getting it wrong in the communication. I mean, when this first came up, was put out, we put this out there a long time ago. The government said no, they would not have a passport, they'd not have a certificate. Then they backtracked on it. Then now it's become a government initiative. I think Gove's looking after it as an initiative. They're really keen to put it through to really bring a safety measure through. And then Boris didn't really answer the questions yesterday about the passport. He didn't really support it or get behind it, and yet it's a mainstay of the government initiative. But Joe's right. The Global Travel Task Force are dealing with this as an issue. It's already being trialled through IATA, and the airlines are trialling it now, so that's already happening. Under 18s is one of the things. Under 18s should be travelling without a vaccination requirement, and those that haven't been vaccinated should be subjected to the relevant testing before and after in the short term. But listen, our country will have everybody offered the vaccination by July. So it should stop being an issue for us, really.
Yeah, okay. All right. I know we're slightly jumping around, but I did just want to come back to the traffic light and the colour codes, because I think one of the concerns, and I know, you know, what we're after is consistency, aren't we? So we don't have what happened last year that Gary referenced, you know, regarding Spain. It came on the list, then it went off, and there was a mad rush for people to get home. Now, Johan Lundgren this morning said he was very confident that whatever the government's working out with the data that they've got, you know, in terms of all the different levels of data, that he's very confident that it won't be this overnight sort of change without any warning. So does that, you know, do you agree with that, Alan? And does that therefore give you more confidence in running your program?
We all, whether you're a tour operator, whether you're an airline or a travel agent, you need notice what's going to happen. And we're not saying weeks or months to notice, but historically, to find things out on the news at 8:30 on a Saturday night or last thing on Sunday, when the phones light up, the social media lights up, and you don't have the answers to give people. So yeah, I'm all in favour of the green, amber, red, but there has to be a notice period of at least 24, 48 hours, and a process in place that we all know how to manage and how we can switch those customers if necessary.
Sorry, Alan, would that be a 24, 48 hours notice to you as a tour operator? But because you don't really want to know the minute the customers know, do you? Because that's the panic.
I'm talking about advance notice. Because there hasn't been any advance notice with any decisions that get made. So of course, when it does happen on a Saturday night, the travel agents and the customers contact us to find out what's happening. Well, it gives us time to actually decide what is best to do, depending on the decision that's been made.
Yeah, okay. And Gary, that would obviously help your members as well. I mean, they were just thrown into it, weren't they? Literally, and everybody found out at the same time with absolutely no notice. So Johan seemed very confident that would not be a case this time round, because there's just so much more intelligence in terms of the data. Is that something you'd be confident of?
Well, I think we can have absolute confidence. There's no way that this will not leak out before it's supposed to come out. So
fair enough.
It's impossible, because there's so many people involved in the decision-making process. But I think if the government, you know, we all asked for the government to publish the criteria of how they're going to move countries between categories, and if it's the red, green, amber, that's brilliant. But actually, what I saw around the data, they need to keep it simple, and I really urge them to do that. But you could get into a scale of 6 different scales, moving between them becomes too complicated.
Yeah. And you say keep it simple, but the different criteria they're using, it's obviously vaccination levels here, vaccination level in another country, it's infection rates. There's so many layers of what they're now going to be looking at, which is great in one way, because obviously we want that level of detail and we want it to be accurate. But I mean, that's not going to be simple. That does sound quite complex to me.
Yeah. Hugely complex, and if we want time to, if we could see trending moving to a red to an amber to a green, there's lots of metrics that are going to come into it, but ultimately there's somebody going to have to make that decision, publish it, comply, align it with the FCDO advice, not just the government advice around the copyright system, get the agreements protocols within the other countries. So there's no way they'll keep that secret. But if you're publishing the criteria, it gives us all confidence to be able to work it out ourselves, so we can see what's going on. You know, we know we're not going to open up to France next week. We can see what's going on with the data. Well, the data's out there in the world now. You can't keep that secret, but let's publish the criteria on what the government's going to make their decisions against, so we can work it out. And then when they make the decision, it's not a surprise to us because we're tracking the same data.
Yeah, and Joanne, you said the same. You want to know the data which will trigger the move from one category to another, and this should be published so agents can give the right advice. So again, you're saying it should be published in advance so that agents aren't suddenly caught on the hop and, you know, having to...
We can't afford to have the hokey-cokey that we had last year from one level. 1 minute you're able to go somewhere, the next minute you're not. And, you know, totally agree. You were getting phone calls on a Thursday evening to say things were happening, and then it was coming out public knowledge. You know, we were getting sort of phone calls from somebody in the Scottish Government. So again, as Gary said, some people were finding out, other people weren't. We need to have somewhere that everybody gets the advice at the same time, and we need to have clear guidelines on what the criteria is, and the government needs to share that with us so that the industry knows about it, so travel agents are aware of what it is that they're going to look at. So we can sit and go, right, that one's going to go into amber next out of green, or vice versa, red into amber. So they do have to, you know, give us a bit more clarity this time than what they did last year.
Presumably, Alan, you're looking at some of it. I mean, you're adding capacity in certain destinations. You're, you know, not launching new routes. So you must be looking at the data at the minute, or I guess you're talking to governments in other countries that are keen to welcome us. I mean, is that how? I know it's difficult, but is that sort of how you're basing some of your decisions at the minute for your program for this summer?
Yeah, there's multiple layers of conversations going on with multiple governments from a Jet2 holiday perspective. I mean, you look, we've just announced that for summer 22, we're going to be doing Sardinia and Sicily. Yeah. We launched Bristol for flying this summer 21. We're still looking at opportunities and still being positive, because we can't sit back and do nothing. But what we do have to be is flexible, and we need something happening this year, this summer 21. So it's good to be looking ahead to summer 22. The sales are very healthy, very positive. But still, nearly a third of every booking that we get is for this year before Christmas, summer 21 and early winter 21-22. So we can't forget about that, because it is still a substantial amount of business. And when things do get moving again, the demand is going to be huge, we believe. So it's preparing, it's putting your money where your mouth is. And as I say, if we believe something's going to happen, then we've got to be prepared that we can deliver that.
Yeah. And not to be too depressing, Gary, but you mentioned there that 60 to 65% of the industry might not be around if it weren't for some of the grants that we've already got. But what, you know, give us the stark reality. If the government doesn't support us, doesn't get things moving, certainly by July, even if we don't make the May 17th for, you know, might be some stuff happening at the 17th, but clearly it's going to be phased. But if we don't get things moving meaningfully by July, what's the reality for the travel industry?
Well, lots of businesses simply run out of cash. You know, getting themselves through the March ATOL renewal is one thing, the May ABTA renewals is another. You need to have a certain amount of cash predicted across your business over the next 12 months, just as a going concern. The reality is that they're getting themselves through that, predicting that revenues are going to start happening in July, August, September, October, November, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60%. And, you know, the market's sitting around 22, 23% of 2019 revenues. And yes, there's some winners in that, some, you know, different products that are selling higher than that for later on this year, but none of us earn any money till they actually travel. So the reality is you simply get businesses running out of money. The added complexity as well is that you remember that 80% of most travel businesses' costs are on furlough right now. So that furlough, just that being extended out to September, gives you more chance to revenues to start to happen and money to start to flow through. But you've got that added challenge that being on furlough doesn't help you take advantage of the marketing and the sales and the demand that's going to come back as soon as it happens, because you're trying to juggle that challenge around your furlough staff. You've also got that constant fear, and I know we all know this, I'm repeating it, what we all know, But every time there's another round of cancellations, you've got more work involved in getting through the refund process. So we're stretched at every single position while still living off cash. Members are living off that cash protection from having people on furlough. So you and on top of that, they're loaded with debt. Their balance sheets are shot, with the CBIL loans, with the debt they've incurred just to get themselves through the last 12 months. So it's a terrifying place for lots of people in our industry for a product that's absolutely consumers want. It's not a broken product. They absolutely want to travel. That's why it's so important we keep passionately making these arguments consistently to government that this is why we need their support and help specifically.
Yeah, well, let's end on a positive then. I mean, I know it's frustrating. I know we need more clarity. I know yesterday was incredibly, disappointing was the word, but actually nothing has really changed, has it? We are still, we think, on track. He's still hopeful of the 17th. So, I know and all eyes are now going to be on April the 12th, but, all of you have talked about demand. You've all talked about, it's a great product still, and we just need some support to help us get the summer away. Would that be your view, Alan?
Yeah, I mean, looking at the talk about well-being and wellness out there at the moment, I don't want a garden shed, I don't want a hot tub, I want a holiday. And I'm sure there's a hell of a lot more people out there that's going to make them feel better than looking at a piece of wood in my back garden. I want the sunshine, I want the beach, I want the food, and I want somebody serving me it as soon as possible. So I'm raring to go, and I believe a hell of a lot more people are out there, and the travel agents and the operators and everybody else is waiting to take those bookings. We just need to get it done safely and the government behind us.
Okay, brilliant place to leave it. I don't want to look at a garden shed either, so I'm with you all the way. So thank you so much. Really great to get your take. And I guess we'll see what happens in a week's time. But thank you to Joe from the SPAA, to Gary from the TTNG, and to Alan from Jet2 Holidays. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.